how they went from 0 to 1 million. My wife would ask me, are you sure this is going to work?
In the beginning of your financial independence journey, every extra $10 that you can save and invest is going to massively compound over the next 40, 50, 60 years.
The second million is easy. I formed the habits, understood how compounding works. It's not about getting highest returns in short amount of time, but it's about getting average returns for the longest amount of time.
Once they hit 100,000, 300,000, 500,000, they start to have enough weight or gravity to grow themselves significantly.
90% of actively managed funds don't beat the market over the long term. And I thought to myself, how can that be true?
Today's guest is my friend Sathish Gajula, the host of the Compounding Project podcast and a senior pharmaceutical engineer who has built his entire life around one simple idea. Small actions, repeated consistently, produce extraordinary results. Sathish and his household began tracking their net worth at zero in 2017. They reached their first 100,000 in 2020, 588,000 in 2025, and recently in 2026 crossed $1 million. But this is not simply an investing story. Sathish applies compounding to his health, his personal development, his marriage, his reading, his relationships, and his creative work. Sathish and I met at FinCon in Portland last year in September of 2025, became fast friends, and got to spend more time together at Economy in Cincinnati earlier this year in 2026. I'm excited to have him on the show today and explore his journey from engineer to millionaire, podcaster, athlete, and student of the compounding life. Welcome to the show, brother.
Justin, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So thanks for the great introduction. I'm just so excited. I hope it's not downhill from here.
It won't be. It's going to compound through the whole episode into extraordinary results.
Love it. Love it.
So one of the things I love about your story, Sathish, is it took your household about 6 years to go from zero to $234,000. Then in roughly 3 years, you added almost $770,000 to hit that $1 million mark. What happened?
Yeah, so a lot of things happened since 2022. So 2022 is when, maybe I'll back off for a second. So from 2017 to 2023, it was just me working as a single income family. So I got married in 2019, and then my wife, she came from India, and then she started doing her master's here. And only in 2022 is when she got a job, and we went from single income family to double income family. And so that was one of the main reasons why our net worth started exploding. And also in 2023, I switched my job. So I was in my previous role for almost like 5 years, and then when I switched my job, there was I negotiated a 50% hike in my salary. So that also helped a lot, right? I was waiting for to badly move to a different role. And in 2024 is when we got our house. We were saving for our house, and then so that 2024 net worth includes my house equity as well. And the last piece is the market. Yeah, since 2023 the market has been going up significantly. I believe it's around 23% in 2023 and 22% in 2024, and then 16%, 10%. So it's always been positive growth. So all this combined to that possibly exponential growth, and of course, there is the compounding aspect as well that helped our net worth to grow in the past 3 to 4 years. But yeah, we can dive deeper into each and everything.
I love it. I have to double click on the 50% increase in your income. How did you make that happen?
Yeah, so I've been so in 2019 I moved to a different role. I was in New Jersey and I moved to a role in Indiana. At that time it was due to my visa situation. I had to accept a job offer which was paying me at that time it was 75K per year. This is back in 2018 2019. And then I thought I had to stay in that job for 5 years despite not making big progress in my salary just because of my visa situation, right? So I'm an immigrant. I came from India, and this company was sponsoring my visa, so I had to stay with the company until my green card was processed, right? So that's why I had to stay in that role. And when that happened, when my visa was sorted out, then I was looking for opportunities, and then I found an opportunity in the East Coast, in one of the in Boston basically. So Boston, the salaries when compared to Indiana were higher, and also since I've been in the role for 5 years, at that time I had probably close to 8 years of experience. And then I was following some negotiation tactics online, and then I tried to apply all those things in this new role, and I was able to negotiate a remote opportunity as well. So I moved to Boston. Stayed there for 1 year, and then I worked. I could pick any place in the US to work, so I picked. I'm currently in North Carolina, so I love this place. I moved just because of my weather, of the weather, and also my wife's job as well. So yeah, that a combination of multiple things, but yeah, the high income from Boston that helped a lot. That was a major move. Like in Indiana, we were not the salaries were not as lucrative as in Boston.
Couple follow-up questions for you. Is comparatively, because I don't know, I assume, but I don't want to make any assumptions, North Carolina less expensive than Boston?
Yes, 100%.
Significantly? Is it considered, is it medium cost of living, low cost of living? What is North Carolina, where you
I
are?
would say it's median cost of living, when compared to, so maybe in terms of like numbers, right? I used to pay a rent of 3,000, about 3,000 for a 3-bedroom apartment in Boston. The same apartment would cost me maybe $2,000 in North Carolina. So probably more like 30% decrease in just house.
Yeah, I love that you got a high paying job in a high cost of living area and then moved to a lower cost of living area while keeping that high paying job. That's great.
Yeah. It's my wife's role also like helped me. She found something here in the North Carolina, and then that also helped me to move. But yeah, it just worked out that way.
Yeah. So I'm curious, for you, which number along your journey felt more meaningful? Was it 100,000 net worth? Was it the 500,000, or was it finally getting that $1 million?
So if you had asked me this question when I hit $100,000 mark, I would have said, $1 million mark would be more meaningful. But now that I hit $1 million mark, I feel the first 100,000, I feel that's more meaningful to me. Because Charlie Munger says the first 100K is the hardest, and I now understand why, because it took me 3 years to hit that first 100K, and that is like, yeah, I'm not too worried about that number 100K, but just that in that 3 years, I formed the habits. I understood how compounding works. And also it was reassuring to me that, okay, it's the habits. The habits are the compound interest of self-improvement, and also the behaviors. It just that first 3 years, because I came from a family who said, stock market is risky, who said stock market is like similar to gambling, right? And then when I started investing in stock market, my parents and even my friends, some of my friends said, you're just you're going to lose money because they have never come across a person who made money in the stock market. So I was all going against the traditional path, right? And then I was trusting something that will work, at that time. Now I realize that, okay, that first 3 years is so crucial, because otherwise I would have quit, right? I would have quit. And then if I had quit back then, and then maybe I went with with my friends and with my, let's say, what my family recommended, it's their intention, right? But they recommend a lot of like real estate, which I don't understand, so I don't invest in something I don't understand. So yeah, that first 3 years helped me develop those habits, and now that first $100,000 is more meaningful to me now that I reached my $1 million net worth.
Yeah. And people love to say they understand compounding, but my belief is until you experience numbers compounding in your own wealth journey, you don't really understand it. And I'm looking at your net worth chart from 2017 to 2026. And 2017, you're at 0. 2018, you're at 30,000. 2019, you're at 61,000. 2020, you hit that first 100,000 mark. 2021, 148,000. 2022, 196,000. 2023, 234,000. So it's not moving that much. Then in 2024, 382,000. Okay, now we're moving. 2025, 588,000. Okay, now we're really moving. And then 2026, a million, almost a double in a year. And that is the compounding curve, the exponential growth, that people can look at an exponential curve on a graph and say, I understand that, but it is radically different to experience that in your own net worth. Because the same thing happened to me. I hit $1 million, and then literally about a year later, I was at 2 million. And my mind, I was like, what the fuck? How the fuck did I just double my money in a year? Now, I was also earning a lot of money, but the market was moving with me. And man, once you get $1 million in the market, you think 100 grand in the market is great. Wait till you get $1 million. So Sathish, probably going to have you back on the show in about a year, maybe a year and a half, and you'll probably have 2 million.
I hope so. Yeah. Charlie Munger says, second million is easy, right? He always says that, but never experienced it. But at least now that I've seen this graph, slightly like compounding, I'm more confident now. But if you had asked me, I was always like trusting that compounding would work, because I read books about compounding, and also I've listened to a lot of stories, like podcasts, and even Quit Like a Millionaire is a book that I followed. It also helped me. She exactly shared the numbers, how they went from 0 to 1 million, and that was assuring to me that, okay, this would work. But still, my wife would ask me, are you sure this is going to work? Because it doesn't seem like it's moving. And when all my friends, they're investing probably in like Nvidia, Google, and all these semiconductor companies, right? And they were making money. And then my wife was like, are we doing the right thing? Even a few times, even I doubted myself. I was like, should I be investing in those companies? But I thought, okay, compounding will work. It has worked. I've seen examples, I've seen data, and I thought I just stayed consistent, and then it's happening.
So you mentioned some stock picking that your friends were doing, Nvidia and some of these other companies. What was the investing that you did or do?
Yeah. So in 2017 is when I read a few books. That's when my whole journey started, after reading this book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. And he talked about this automating framework that I felt it's like I'm just lazy. I just want to do the minimum amount of work and get maximum amount of returns. I'm an engineer, so that's what I think most engineers think. So at that time, Ramit Sethi pointed out of a study, I believe, where he said he mentioned a study where like 90% of actively managed funds don't beat the market over the long term. And I thought to myself, how can that be true? Because all these like actively managed fund managers, they should be beating the market because that's what they're supposed to do, because they went to fancy schools, they earned these fancy degrees, and they are managing this huge amount of portfolio and they're paid crazy amounts of money, and still they can't beat the market. I thought that didn't make sense. I did some research. I read a few books. The Stocks for the Long Run was one of the few books that helped me understand how the market performs over the long term, and also Random Walk Down Wall Street. And there are several other books like we can double click on that. So all these books were pointing out that it's not about getting short returns. It's not about getting highest returns in short amount of time, but it's about getting average returns for the longest amount of time. And that clicked for me in 2017. So I never did individual stocks because I thought it was always like scary. I was always like, what if it goes to zero? So, and after I read these books and Simple Path to Wealth also, and it was very reassuring as well, I moved to index funds. So index funds are, for people who have never heard of them, they track for let's say S&P 500 is an index fund. It's an index which tracks the top 500 companies in the US. So a fund that I first started with is VOO, which was tracking the top 500 companies in the US by Vanguard. So I kept investing all my money at that time into this VOO, and then just try to maximize that. I was focusing more on what I could control, which is my savings, instead of trying to beat the market, because it's almost impossible for an average person to beat the market over long term. So that's been my investing philosophy for the past 10 years.
I love it. Yeah, so VOO, that is Vanguard's S&P 500 index ETF. And like Sathish said, it's just the top 500 largest publicly traded companies. And one of the beautiful things that Sathish mentioned in passing is a single stock can go to zero. The company can go out of business. But an index ETF or index fund like VOO can never go to zero, because if one of those companies of the 500 goes to zero, it doesn't become the S&P 499. They just take the next largest company and put it in there, and it's self-cleansing. As our friend J.L. Collins likes to say, self-cleansing is one of the massive benefits you get with index funds and index ETFs is you don't have to pick the right stock, because the right stocks just naturally find their way into the S&P 500 and VTI and VTSAX. And I'm curious, when did you read The Simple Path to Wealth? Because you and I are both huge fans, J.L. Collins, and he's been on my show a few times. He's either been on your show or you guys are about to record with him because I made the introduction. So when did you read The Simple Path to Wealth?
Yeah, and thanks for the introduction, by the way. We just recorded the JL Collins episode just last week. It's going to be an anniversary special for 50th episode, which we are going to release in 2 weeks. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. And he's so cool. Like, I've always wanted JL on this show, and I never knew how to reach him. But yeah, thanks for the introduction. And then he's been so great, and his voice is so soothing. I even kept, I told him while recording, and he said, a lot of people say that. But yeah, it's great. Yeah. When it comes to Simple Path to Wealth, so I started my journey in 2017, and I first heard about the term financial independence back in 2018, like mid 2018 is when I first heard about financial independence from reading JL's blog, JL Colin NH, I believe, .com. That's the blog that I read first, and then loved his blog, and then found his book Simple Path to Wealth, and that led me to what actually financial independence is. Because in 2017 I was just focusing on automating my money, and that was it, because there was no purpose, there was no end goal. But JL Collins, a blog, his book, and also Mr. Money Mustache blog, that actually gave me the purpose, purpose behind the wealth building journey.
So you've mentioned several times already automation. Tell us why automation, when it comes to your money, is so important.
Yeah, I believe this is one of the most underrated tips when it comes to wealth building, because most people rely on willpower, or they rely on discipline. They think, okay, it's just like going to the gym, right? People think, I have to go to the gym every day to make it, to, get healthy. And similarly, they think, okay, I have to constantly, invest money every day, or maybe every month, I have to physically go and go into my account and then, invest that money. But it's actually automating your finances is one of the best thing that you can do to, build wealth. Because I'm still I started my automation journey in 2017, all my automation. I'm still using that automation till date also. Maybe I increase those contributions or decrease sometimes based on my, spending situation, but that automation is still running. It's for something that I started 10 years ago, and it's also going to run for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right? It's that one simple decision that I took 10 years ago, and it's giving dividends, I would say, every year. And I believe it's one of the most underrated hacks in the whole wealth space. Most people focus, overestimate on discipline and willpower, but underestimate the power of automation.
Yes. And what Sathish is speaking of is automating his investing. So every week or every month or twice a month, you can set it up weekly, daily, monthly, bi-monthly. Money automatically is taken from one of his banking accounts, like his checking account, and it goes into his investment account, and it automatically purchases the index fund or index ETF for him. So he doesn't even have to think about it. And this is what paying yourself first means. So a lot of people are familiar with that term, pay yourself first. I remember before I discovered financial independence, I heard that, but it didn't make any sense to me. But what paying yourself first means is you automatically invest a portion of your paycheck every single month, maybe every 2 weeks, maybe weekly, and that way, the money isn't sitting there for you to spend. And without using any willpower, any brain power, you're investing at least once a month, if not weekly. So when I was on my journey to getting to financial independence and now early retired for 2 years, I set up weekly investments. So every week, a certain amount would go in. And I got paid every 2 weeks, but I liked the idea of investing every week. It just made me feel good to know that, yes, I invested this week. Yes, I invested this week. And I didn't have to do anything because it took maybe 5 to 7 minutes to set up. And you can set up automated investing with Vanguard, which is a brokerage platform, with Fidelity, with Charles Schwab. Those are the three I use and recommend to my coaching clients because they're vetted, they're good, they're legit. Not a huge fan of Robinhood because it encourages people to invest like it's a casino and gamble. But you can use Robinhood. I just think there's a lot of distractions in Robinhood that will turn you from an investor into a stock picking gambler. So that's what Sathish means by automated investing, is paying yourself first. And it is so easy to set up nowadays. And it is literally the reason that by default, Sathish became a millionaire.
100%. 100%. And also, just to double click on what you just said, it's, when you automate that decision, let's say on January 1st, if you're investing maybe $1,000 per month, right? If the market is, let's say, at 1,000 points, just for the sake of calculation, so you would get one share of that particular index, right? And let's say if the market were to fall down by 500 points, then you would still invest the same $1,000, and at that time you will get two shares, which again, you're basically you're buying it at a low price. And then also when the price is high, you're just limiting your number of shares. It's basically like, let's say if you were to think about that decision, right? Maybe let's say if you did not automate and you had to physically go on January 1st to invest. And let's say if the market is at 1,000 points and you might feel, okay, maybe the market is too high right now or too low right now. I don't want to invest right now. Maybe I'll just wait. And then you'll come back on February 1st and the market would have gone to like 1,200 points. And at that time you feel like, oh my God, it has gone. It's so expensive now. Then I'll wait for the market to come back down. And then you'll wait for every first of every month, and the market would keep going up. If it doesn't go up forever. There are some market corrections, but still, that one decision, you will wait forever, to invest. Versus, and if you just automate it, you're winning, because you are, when the price is low, you're buying more shares, and when the price is high, you're buying less shares, which is exactly what you should be doing. And that's why I love automation. And I highly recommend people who are listening to this who haven't automated their finances yet. Yeah, you can not only automate your investments, but also, you can automate your savings. I automate a fixed amount to go from my checking account to a high yield savings account. And I automate my credit card payments to pay in full every month. And yeah, you can basically, like, any decision that I feel like, I'll just ask, can this be automated? If it can be automated, I'll just automate it, because out of sight, out of mind. And now the beautiful part, which you all already alluded to, is when I was a student, at that time I was surviving on $1,000 per month. So this was back when I came from India to US to do my master's. At that time I was living very frugally, living with my roommates, and I was surviving on $1,000 per month. At that time I thought, okay, maybe if I get 70K or 80K per year, then I would save a lot of money, and then make more money, right? Basically like save more money. But when I started making 70K per year back in 2016, and I was still living paycheck to paycheck because of lifestyle inflation, because I got a new job. So I thought, okay, I'll just live in my own room, and then maybe get a car. At that time I still bought a used car, but still I got a car. So your life upgrades, this lifestyle inflation will happen without you realizing it. And at that time I was surviving on 70K per year. And then I thought, okay, maybe if I make 100K per year, then maybe I would save that extra 30K. But again, if you can't save on 70K per year, I think it's very highly unlikely to save on 100K per year, because it's all about that lifestyle inflation, your behaviors. Versus, let's say when I was making 70K per year, and then I was automating my maybe 10K per year to go into investments, and I was surviving on 60K per year, and I didn't feel deprived. So it's basically like paying yourself first will also stop you from lifestyle creep to happen. And also, again, compounding will do wonders, when you invest consistently over a long period of time.
Yeah. Wanted to double click on, you basically told us what dollar cost averaging is by, if you set, say, $1,000 is going into the your investments every week or every month. And sometimes the market's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's somewhere in between those two, sometimes it's somewhere else. And you beautifully illustrated the mental effort it takes to look at the stock market and see, it's up really high. Is it too high? I don't know. Maybe I'll wait. And then you come back a week later. The market's down. Is it too low? Should I invest? Maybe I'll wait. And this is why people spend years not investing, and they waste massive amounts of mental energy. And if you just set up automated investing, that creates the dollar cost averaging, which all the research shows that dollar cost averaging time in the market is how you become wealthy, not timing the market. If you time the market, you're going to do exactly what Sathish and I illustrated, is you're going to stand on the sidelines most likely, or you're going to be investing emotionally, which is a whole nother danger. And you just want to take yourself and your human emotions out of it, set up automated investing, and just focus on never interrupting those automated investments, and whenever you can, increasing them. So as you get a pay raise, instead of getting the next fancier car, increase your investment contributions per month. Or maybe get a slight upgrade in a part of your life, but then also a massive upgrade in your investments. And if you just keep doing that each time you get a raise, focus on taking maybe 50% of that raise and putting that into investments, and then the other 50% of that raise you can use to inflate your lifestyle, you will become very wealthy. And you'll still be able to buy yourself upgraded things over time. And then one other thing Sathish mentioned is how he automated his credit card payment. And again, people don't recognize how much mental, emotional energy it takes to pay bills. And that same mental, emotional energy is the mental, emotional energy that you need to get a raise, or to start a side business, or to start a podcast, or to become a better pickleball player, whatever it is. And so you want to take anything that can be automated, especially when it comes to your money, and automate it so you can get that mental energy, that emotional energy back, and you can then use that mental, emotional energy towards other things that are going to move the needle. Whereas paying your bills manually every month is not going to move the needle. It's just going to take away your energy.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I even some of my friends ask me now, like, how do you manage your 9 to 5 and also create content, and on top of that go to the gym and play pickleball and all the stuff. Because even not when it comes to automation, not only automated my investments, I even automated my life as well in areas that doesn't need me, right? For example, even just today, I every month I have somebody who can mow lawn for me. Like it'll take 2 hours, for me to mow my own lawn, or I could pay somebody to mow my own lawn. At that time, I was preparing for this podcast. Like in the 2 hours while I have somebody who is mowing the lawn, I'm preparing for this podcast so that we can have a great conversation. And just like that, I've tried to have my groceries delivered. It may not be complete automation, but still that's one less decision, right? I don't have to go to, let's say, Costco to buy my groceries. And that too, like, Costco is very good at maybe urging you to buy. Like, they're so good at let's say, like, if I have maybe 10 items in my list, and when I go to Costco and when I come back, I'll come up with like 30 items, which I never had the intention of buying them, but that's maybe a financial habit, right? I hardly go to Costco unless like my wife was like, hey, I just want some peace, and she just forces me to go to Costco. But yes, there are so many decisions like this where if you feel like you can save time, right, and save time and use that time on also mental energy to spend on something that you love doing. I think it's a trade-off, because no matter like if you're Elon Musk, or if you're somebody who is from a remote area, like you still have 24 hours. How we optimize that 24 hours, it's like completely in our control. And that's why, like, we even you started your own financial independence journey just to take control of that 24 hours to do things that you love doing.
Yeah. And I want to point something out, because this is really critical for people who are just starting out, people who are in the middle of their financial independence journey, and people who are at the end, meaning they've achieved financial independence. In the beginning of your financial independence journey, every extra $10 that you can save and invest is going to massively compound over the next 40, 50, 60 years. And so in the beginning of, if you're at a net worth of 0 or in debt, you don't want to pay someone to mow your lawn. You want to mow your lawn. I want you to understand this, because that, let's say you pay that person $100. That's $100 every 2 weeks, or $200 that you could be investing. And if you do that when you're 25, you're putting that $200 in at 25, and then you let that compound for 40 years, it's going to turn into millions of dollars. But as you get that first, and I don't know what the net worth is, we should probably, you and I, talk about this, but I think once you get somewhere between 500K and $1 million, you want to start buying back your time. And this is where, at a millionaire, and honestly, I waited until I was a multimillionaire, but we have a housekeeper come to our house twice a month. It's the best investment I've ever made in my marriage. It's ridiculous, but I definitely did not do that at the beginning of my financial independence journey. At the beginning of my financial independence journey, me and my wife were cleaning the house, and that gave us that extra. We probably pay our house cleaner. I'm guessing my wife does it. I don't even know. I think it's somewhere between $400 and $600 a month. So like $200 to $300 per time she comes. But that call it $600 a month, is the best investment ever for our marriage, because we don't have to fight over who's cleaning the toilets and who's cleaning the bathroom and who's doing the deep cleaning. The house cleaner does it. But when you're first starting, I really do believe every $10, every $100 that you can save and put into the stock market until you get to that first 500K, and maybe it's lower, maybe it's more. I'm actually curious, at what net worth number do you think people should start buying back their time?
That's a good question. I've never thought about it, but I in my own journey, I started doing maybe, somewhere between 500 to $1 million as well, because I was, back in the day, right, in for the first few years of my journey, I used to even drive probably like 5 miles just to save 10 cents on gas. I used to do that, and I thought I was winning. And also I used to stay in the Costco, that gas line, even though if it takes me like half an hour to fill my gas, I used to stay half an hour, because at that time I did not understand the value of time. I knew the importance of money, and I knew the importance of investing those dollars. So that was my mindset. And only when I started my podcast journey, and also when I had my first baby, right? And that's when I realized, okay, we're trying to, now we are at a point where our investments, we have that solid foundation from investments. So that investments would, compound, unless we don't interrupt it unnecessarily, right? So that's when I started trying to optimize for time instead of optimizing for money. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, somewhere between 500 to a million would be a good starting point. And also, like, people need to evaluate. I highly recommend people to come up with just an hourly rate. Let's say currently I value my time maybe around $100 per hour, let's say, right? And then so if it takes me like 2 hours to mow my lawn versus if it takes if I can outsource it to somebody who can do it for $50 per hour, then I feel like that's a good investment. But I absolutely agree with you that we should not have this thinking, especially when you are starting your journey, because at that time we need all the extra money, any extra money that you can afford, that to go into investing, because that will compound. People think it's even like minute, $100 per month, like what can it do when it comes to compounding journey. But yeah, try using a compound interest calculator and try just adding an extra $100 per month, and then let it compound for 20, 30, 40 years. Yeah, it'll just blow your mind.
Yeah. In the beginning of your financial independence journey, you got to build the wealth snowball big enough so it can start rolling on its own. And visually, if you're listening and not looking at this, you want to think about a snowball that's really small. It doesn't have enough weight to roll down a hill itself, but eventually as the snowball gets bigger and bigger, then it has enough weight to literally start propelling itself down the hill because of the gravity. And it's the same concept with your investments. Once they hit 100,000, 300,000, 500,000, they start to have enough weight or gravity to grow themselves significantly. You're getting compounding at $10,000 invested, but it's not noticeable because it's maybe a couple $100 a month. But then when you have $1 million invested and the stock market goes up by 20% in a year, that's $200,000 that just made itself. And that's where our minds don't understand. I've seen my net worth. I haven't worked for the last 2 years at a corporate job, and I've only made a little bit of money from just working 5 to 15 hours a week on things I enjoy. And I've made almost $1 million in 2 years by making little to no money, just because I have enough money in the market that it's just continuing. That snowball is so fucking big, it's just rolling really fast down the hill, getting bigger and bigger, picking up more snow as it goes. And I think when we can take these financial concepts and put them into visual representations or stories, it allows us to understand the power of the concept. And this is why at the beginning of your financial independence journey, fucking mow your lawn, clean your house, do your dishes, get the cheapest groceries you can, that are still healthy and organic. Now, my wife and I maybe go to the grocery store maybe once every 2 or 3 months. And we order Instacart every week. And there's a huge service fee on it. But it's a waste of our time now to go to the grocery store, because we have a certain level of net worth where it's more valuable for us to rest or do creative work or go play pickleball or meet with clients or record a podcast than it is to go to the grocery store.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with the Instacart part. But I would say actually it costs less to order on Instacart versus going to the store, just because, when you order on Instacart, you know what to order and you'll just place that order, right? There is no...
Not true, because when you get to checkout, they say, would you also like this, this, and this? And so the app is getting better and better at turning itself into a physical grocery store that, Like you're at the checkout aisle in the grocery store and there's candy bars and magazines and gum and all these little knickknacks. And now they're doing the same fucking thing on the Instacart app where it's you're about to check out and it's like, oh, you got this. You'll probably also like this, this, and this. And then you're like, oh, sure, why not?
That's true. That's true. I usually like skip, that part. Maybe, once it becomes so good that I'll probably check it out. But when you go to the store, they'll have like physical samples, right? Especially when you're hungry and you walk by the store by that sample, right? It's very hard to not try it, especially when you're hungry. And like Costco is very good at doing this, right? They keep all this like big like important items right in the back, all your milk, your groceries and all that stuff, so that you'll walk through all these offers. And then sometimes I've seen friends who just picked up a fishing rod and they never fish, but they thought the deal was too good, right? It was like 50% off, and so they bought it. But yeah, this like he never had the intention of picking that up. But for me, like Instacart is just a win-win. I just want to maybe since we talked about how important the dollars, especially the initial dollars, I recently came across one example where, let's say if you are at age 30, right, and if you want to become a millionaire by age 60, right, you should be investing $400 per month at an average annual return of 10% per year. If you invest $400 per month at age 60, so in 30 years you'll become a millionaire. Right. Let's say if you delay that by 5 years, your investing journey by 5 years, now the amount you should be investing actually doubles. So you need to invest $800 per month at age 35 to become a millionaire at age 60. Let's say if you delay even by 5 years, let's say you were enjoying your life and then YOLOing and all that stuff, a delay by even 5 years, so at age 40, you should be doing like $1,600 per month to become a millionaire by 60, right? And then every 5 years, you have to double your investments to reach that goal. Versus, let's say, I said at age 30, you need to be investing $400 per month. Versus, let's say if you start your journey at age 25, you'll be investing only like $200 per month, because you only need to invest half, at that point. So that initial dollars at age 25, it's more manageable to invest $200 per month for somebody who's just started working for a 9-to-5 job, right? Versus somebody at age 40 to invest that $1,600 per month. At that time, maybe they have a mortgage, they have a few car payments, and they have to manage kids, childcare and all the stuff. So yeah, those initial dollars are very important. Like, what the best we can do to hang on to those dollars and invest it. It'll just work wonders for you.
And if you're 20, start investing $100 a month and you will be a millionaire by 60.
Is that crazy? Yeah, I can just I still don't believe all this compounding calculation. Our brain is not wired to think exponentially. In this psychology of money, Morgan Housel talks, if you ask somebody what is 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, it's 32, right? If you ask the same person what is 8 times 8 times 8 times 8, no, it's very hard to give that number, because our brains are not wired to think exponentially. I've seen so many examples of compounding, but if you ask me any question about compounding, let's say, if you compound this at maybe 20% annual return for 40 years, I still can't come up with a number. Even if I come up with a number, the actual result will be way higher, because it's so hard to think exponentially, and it's so hard, especially for somebody who's just started the journey, to think how much that money that they invest would compound into. It's just so hard. You just have to trust the process and start it.
Yeah. So I want to rewind a little bit, just because I'm personally curious, but I also think it's helpful for people to understand. When you were growing up, what was your family's relationship with money?
Yeah, so I grew up in a family where, so my dad, we have a textile business. It's a small scale business, but so my dad didn't study after 10th grade. Yeah, the maximum he did was like 10th grade, and my mom was maybe like she stopped after third grade, because at that time like education was not that important. I come from a very rural background in India, but my dad and my mom, like both were like really hardworking. So my dad, he, even till this date, he's so focused on uh, his business that he's 62 right now, and still he works on his own business because he loves doing that. And I believe that's one of the only skills that I think he has gained over his lifetime, right? He loves just talking about money. But while growing up, we were not, that was such a taboo subject to talk about. All I knew was my dad, he loves doing this business, and then he we have this textile business also. He loves like buying land. Like I believe in India, like coming from India, like we're so attached to like real estate, like buying lands, and that's what most people used to do back then. Whenever whatever savings they have, that's the obvious thing to do, because stock market was considered gambling. Like that, there was no question for somebody at that time just to talk about like stock market investing. It was out of the picture. And I was told the same thing, like stay out of stock market. It's risky, and it's gambling. It's, yeah, I mean, my dad said like he has never seen anybody making money in the stock market, and the most obvious choice at that time was to buy a land. And I thought that was the way to go, like save, and then just buy land, and that was it. I mean, he did good, like he loves doing it. He did good. But when I came to the US, the only money advice that I had until then was just to save, and that's it. Like so frugality is something that came very naturally to me, because like my parents, they're so frugal. Even till late, I wish, like my dad, I reads his book, Die with Zero, because he still holds on to that money as like very precious. Like he even, I tell him, like hey, you can hire a coach, a fitness coach, because now, right, lately he's been slightly into maybe yoga and all that stuff. He doesn't lift weights though. I've been telling him to lift weights, but he says he doesn't like it. But I can understand. Yeah, he hasn't lifted weights for almost like 30 years of his life, and at this point, it might be difficult for him. But I still tell him, okay, you can use the wealth that you have created to probably like hire a coach, or maybe travel. But he still holds on to those dollars like like a precious gold, right? And that's why I wish he reads our book. But yeah, so that's the only advice that I received, was just to save money. But I didn't know what to do with that saved money. I thought, I thought if I have to become a millionaire, I thought I have to like physically save $1 million. I thought that is how we'll become millionaires, until I read these books, and which helped me start my own journey.
So in 2017, when you had your financial independence awakening, how did that happen? Was there a book, a podcast, a conversation? What was the catalyst for you getting on the financial independence path?
Great question. Yeah, this is something like very emotional to me. So what happened was in 2017. So I graduated. So I came to the US in 2013 to do my master's. So I did my master's in chemical engineering. I went to Rutgers University, and then I graduated in 2015. So in 2015 until 2017, I got a job which was paying me at that time around $70,000 per year, right? And then I thought I was living a good life, and then when I was returning back from work on Monday evening, I got a phone call from a friend, and he said, hey, we was just chatting about how things were going on, and then he said, hey, do you have $380. I still remember the exact number. He asked, do you have $380? I was like, why do you need 380? And then he was like, I have to pay my immigration fees. At that time, he was struggling to maintain his visa status, and he had to pay $380. And I said, okay, I'll just transfer you the amount. And then I looked at my bank account. I had less than $100. Believe me, I had less than $100. I did not believe that. And then I asked my friend, hey, can you use my credit card? And then he was like, I need it has to be a check because I'm paying the government, and it has to be a check at that time. So I felt so on my way to work after I cut the call, I felt so devastated because I thought, okay, I followed all the advice that my parents, my friends, my relatives, what the society was telling me to do, right? Go to school, get a good job, get good grades, and work on a full-time job. And I was on the outside, I was living the life that people would aspire, right? But on the inside, I was a financial ruin. I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I didn't realize that. I felt so bad that on that day when I went back to my room, I opened my laptop and back then there was no AI, so I just Googled how to stop living paycheck to paycheck. That's the first thing I Googled. And then there were at that time the blogs were a big thing, but now podcasts and there are a lot of other stuff, but blogs were a big thing. So I had a habit of listening to songs, music, when I was driving to work. So I read a few blogs then. There were so many blogs at that time. I was reading I read a few blogs, and then I didn't realize, I woke up next day and I thought I wanted to read those blogs, but still I have to go to work. So at that time, there was this podcast called Optimal Finance Daily. I don't know if you know about it, but that podcast was, they used to read those blogs, for people who don't have time to read, they'll just read it for you. So you can just open a episode and it's just probably for 10 minutes and they'll read a certain blog, right? And so I was listening to that particular blog, Optimal Finance Daily, and then there was this person whose blogs kept coming up very frequently, and he was Ramit Sethi, and at that time his blog was iwillteachyoutoberich.com. So he was reading a lot of articles, and then since he had Indian origin, maybe I connected with him a lot, and then I realized he had a book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and then that was a flashy title, but I thought, okay, maybe I want to become rich, I want to stop living paycheck to paycheck. And then I bought that book. I read that book over a weekend. I felt like it was just speaking to me, the situation that I'm in, it was just speaking to me. And I immediately implemented that book, all the automation, which I said, I'm still running that same automation. But yeah, that was my financial awakening moment.
Yeah, I love it. It's so interesting how a podcast or a set of blog articles can completely transform your money journey. And, I've shared on the show many times, something similar happened to me. I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and this guy, Mr. Money Mustache, was on the show. And this was in July of 2017, if my memory serves me correct. I didn't do anything with it. I just thought to myself, wow, I've never heard someone talk about money. And 3, 4 months, 5 months later, I was cleaning up my taxes because I was 6 years behind on my taxes. And I thought to myself, I need some inspiration to get my financial shit in order. And so I Googled Mr. Money Mustache, and his article, The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement, came up. I clicked on it. It takes maybe 4 or 5 minutes to read the article, and my mind exploded when I read it, because it basically, what happened in my mind was, if I had understood this when I was 25 and just starting out in my career, I would already be a millionaire by now. Because I think in 2017 I was maybe 32, and then I just went down the whole rabbit hole of reading blogs, listening to podcasts, all on financial independence, and that was at the very end of 2017. And by 2020, so 2 years, I was a millionaire, and it's crazy. So I love that you shared your Phi Awakening story. And the next thing I want to talk about is the fact that personal finance content often tends, and content in general, online content, tends to glorify entrepreneurship. But both you and I have achieved our financial independence through a W-2 career. So I'm curious just your thoughts on entrepreneurship and a W-2 career, meaning a traditional 9-to-5 job, in regards to pursuing financial independence.
Yeah, when I was working in my previous job, I did not like maybe 80% of what I was doing in my previous job. At that time, I was dreading my W-2 job, but I actually realized it's more possible to build wealth using a W-2 job versus doing an entrepreneurship. Just hear me out here. So in W-2 job, you have a steady income that's coming to you, right? And you can create that automation that I was talking about using a W-2 job, because most people they just underestimate how much that if you're working for a full-time job, when it comes to like the benefits, right, the 401k match, and the bonuses, the stock, let's say the stock option that they give, and the health benefits, right? I at that time I thought, okay, I didn't like my job, but I feel like W2 job is one of the biggest reasons why, like, me and my wife both have achieved this $1 million net worth. But let's say if we were to take that entrepreneurship path, maybe I would have, let's say, quit my job let's say 3 years ago, right? That's when I started my content creation. But honestly speaking, I don't think I would be making that much in content creation, because it's especially like in W2, it's a repeatable process, right? Anybody who has a W2 job, maybe let's say who's making maybe 70 to 100K, if you control your expenses, right, and then invest the difference, you can become a millionaire. It's just a matter of time, right? And also how much money you invest. Versus when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's so much survivorship bias out there, because let's say, if people take the example of like college dropouts, right? Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and they say, okay, they have dropped out of college, and then they built these multi-billion-dollar business, even trillion-dollar businesses, right? But there are so many people who have dropped out of college and still who are not millionaires, but it's just like that survivorship bias, right? And then when it comes to entrepreneurship, like we all look at maybe Elon Musk or all these entrepreneurs, and then glorify the entrepreneurs. But if you look at the actual data, I don't have the numbers, but maybe it's somewhere between like 80 to 90% of these small businesses, they fail after 1 year. Right? I mean, I could be wrong on the math, but that's about it, right? So and also for me, me personally, I used to dread W2 job, but I realized how important it is, especially for somebody who wants to become financially independent. It's very hard to make money in the content creation journey, especially if you don't have the credentials, right? So for me, like I've been creating finance content, but I don't have a CPA or CFP degrees, or even I don't have any finance background. So it's very hard to make money in the content creation, to become financially independent versus using W2 job. I think that's I don't want people to just stay in a job that they absolutely hate and then reach FI. Maybe they can switch jobs to something that they can still tolerate, but have that compounding engine work, right? Getting that 401k match, maxing out retirement accounts, HSAs, and also your taxable brokerage accounts. Use the W2 and maybe build that foundation, not necessarily become FI, or you could be doing entrepreneurship on the side. Let's say I sometimes I work maybe 5 to 10 hours on my content creation and then 40 hours job, and then when you entrepreneurship, or when your side hustle starts generating money, that's when I feel you need to evaluate to see if that makes sense, and maybe quit job versus it's at some point I thought, okay, I'll quit my job and then start this content creation journey. And I wish I did not do that, because I knew 3 years into the content creation journey, it's very, very hard to make money, especially if you're relying on these algorithms, right? YouTube, Insta, and all these algorithms. You don't know, you're just a slave to the algorithm, I feel like. And I mean, since I'm coming from that W2 background, I lean towards W2, but it's definitely a personal choice.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned survivorship bias, because no one hears about the millions of people who tried to start a business and failed, because no one wants to hear that story, because it's an unhappy ending. We only hear about the people who made it. And it's the same thing with content creators. We only hear about the content creators who make a ton of money. And there's probably a tiny fraction that actually make money. I think I did a research on this one point, and someone will have to ask ChatGPT or Claude, but the number of creators that make over 100,000 a year was something crazy. Like, I want to say when I researched this, it was 2 to 5% of them. So that means 95 to 98% of content creators are not making over 100 grand. And the other thing people forget, because entrepreneurship is so sexy and glorified, is oftentimes you're trading a 40-hour work week for an 80-hour work week and less money, less security, spiky income, and just 100 times more stress. And for some people, it's the right move. But I think a lot of people, unfortunately, there's a bit of a hating on the 9-to-5 job in this current era. But I read this book in the beginning of my sales career by Cal Newport called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. And basically that book, the premise is forget about your passions and just figure out what you're really good at naturally, and then get even better at that, and then utilize that to make as much money as you can. And then you develop all this financial capital, social capital, career capital, and then you can translate all those various sources of capital into all sorts of things. And that's exactly what I did, because I realized I had this natural knack for being a really good salesperson. And so I challenged myself, okay, let's make as much money as possible as a salesperson. And in my peak earning year, I made almost $900,000 in a single year. And the funniest part, because my job was a commission. I had a base salary plus commission, but it was performance based. So I was really only working 3 to 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, 80 to 90% of the year, and making that $900,000, which is bananas. But this is, I think, within the W-2 world, there's this subsection of commissioned performance-based type work like sales jobs, which I think are a cheat code, because if you enjoy playing the game of performing, which I do, you can do really well. But at the same token, you yourself, perfect example, you realize, holy shit, with a little bit of forethought, a little bit of strategy, I can go from $75,000 to $150,000 in one job change. Doubling your income, which is, and I think a lot of people also get lazy about growing their career income, which in my mind is a proactive, never-ending, iterative process. You should always be working to grow your income at your 9-to-5 or your W-2, because it is the biggest lever to earn more money. You could make, like Sathish, an extra $75,000 a year, or you could start a side hustle that maybe makes you $5,000 a year. And which one gives you more money? And I guarantee the side hustle is going to take 100 times more work, and you're going to get 5,000 versus 1/100th of the work, get a raise and get a $75,000 raise, and that's a $70,000 delta between the side hustle and just proactively growing your career income. So I think I like to say you should love your fucking job, because they are paying you to learn, grow, and get better. It's like paid education.
For sure. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one, one thing I said previously is like, if really is, if you feel like your job that you're working is like really toxic, I just don't want people to just, hang in there for, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years, because, that's time that you will never get back. Or maybe at that time, you could be thinking about like, switching jobs, but it's just that most people like glorify entrepreneurship. What's like, if you really, tap your foot in the water, then you'll understand how difficult it is. Because for me, like, content creation, I still enjoy podcasting, but I don't think I would be making like, $200,000, just by doing podcasting. Like, I don't think it's a possibility. Maybe, like you said, like maybe top 2%, 5% of people would make. I've been consistent, right? Most people also like talk about like consistency when it comes to content creation, but yeah, ultimately we like slave to that algorithm. Also, I've seen like so many YouTube channels, they're still like they post consistently, but still they don't they haven't experienced that exponential growth yet. Right. I mean, it's very it's hard to replicate, right? But yeah, when it comes to like W2, we have seen it is, there are so many books about it. There are so many podcasts who have shared their real stories on how it's actually a repeatable process, right? If you can start now, and then, if you really are diligent when it comes to your savings, investments, you can become a millionaire probably like in 10 years, 15 years. It depends on how much you save and invest, but it's still like repeatable versus, let's say, if you still start, maybe you start a job, start an entrepreneurial journey now, we don't know what's going to happen in 10 years, right? Maybe, I mean, you might become successful, right? You might become a multimillionaire, but there is no like repeatable strategy that anybody can follow. So, but still, like, yeah, and we don't want like people, like all the people listening to this, like, to just go 9 to 5, but we need somebody to build also, right? We need that Elon Musk. We don't want that future Elon Musk who's listening to this podcast and then who would give up on their entrepreneurial dream and then go do a 9 to 5 job. But yeah, it's definitely a personal choice, and but. Yeah, 9 to 5 gets a bad rap, but it's not as bad as that people portray it to be.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. If you're in a toxic job, go get another job. There's the same version of your job at a million different companies, and find one that is a great fit. Or there is a lateral move into a different job that is similar but different, that may be more aligned with you. And, I was with my company for 10 years because I actually really enjoyed the work I did. I loved our CEO and founder. He's still one of my best friends. And my bosses were amazing, and I enjoyed my coworkers. Now, would I pay to do that job? Absolutely not. Would I do it for free? Absolutely not. But it made great money. I enjoyed the people I worked with. I believed in the company mission, and I really enjoyed sales. I was really good at it, and it was really fun for me, and honestly paved the way for a lot of what I do now, because it was constantly pitching and presenting, speaking in front of people. And then when COVID happened, everything went to Zoom. So basically it's what I'm doing right now on this, Riverside recording for this podcast that we're doing. So it paid me all these speaking, presenting skills. And I'm very grateful for it. So I want to do a slight transition. You mentioned a couple times your wife asking you, is this really going to work? Or is this all going to work out? Are we doing the right thing with our money? I'm just curious, because I always find it fascinating how the FI journey unfolds in a marriage. Because usually one of two people in the relationship discover it, and if you want to be open and vulnerable, some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't work when you tried to introduce the concept of financial independence to your wife.
Oh yeah. This is I love this topic because a few friends have asked me a similar question. Because I agree with you that it's most likely it's not both husband and wife will come across FI at the same time. It's very unlikely. So it's either wife or a husband will come up with financial independence, and then it's very hard for the other person to be convinced, right? So I'll share my own journey. So I started my journey in 2017, and we got married in 2019. And so when she was doing her master's, so we had this habit of going to library. Once at that time we were doing CrossFit in the evening, and then after doing CrossFit, we didn't have much to do at our house. We thought, okay, we'll just go to library because I'm boring. You can tell me I go to library,
what would any nerd do? Go to the library after you go work out.
Yeah, my wife calls me boring, but that's okay. I love going there, right? So we used to go to library, and then so during that time, I first heard about financial independence in 2018, and then I wanted to talk to my wife about all these concepts of financial independence, but I was slowly introducing it, and then she was rejecting it in the beginning, right? She was rejecting the idea that why would somebody stop working, because our brain is wired to think that, okay, we have to work until 65. Why do we stop working? And why because it was, that idea was so foreign to her. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll her exams were done back then, and then she was just trying to find something to read at the library. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll give her a book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, because that's something I believe it's for any beginner can read that book and pick up the concepts. So I thought, okay, while I was reading some books myself, and then I told her, okay, maybe why did you read this book? It's a good book. It has changed lives of multiple people. And the best part of that book is it's told as a story, and it's not just like a prescriptive medicine that some people say, okay, invest x amount and all that stuff, but it talks about it shares a story about a rich dad and a poor dad, and explains the financial concepts of assets and liabilities. And she finished that book in almost, I would say, in 5 days, in the time that we were going to library. And then the first thing she asked was like, why wasn't I taught about this in school? Like, I thought house was an asset. I thought, and she didn't even know what an asset was, but she thought, okay, a rich life was, acquiring a house, acquiring a luxury car, and, having a lavish lifestyle. She thought that was the rich life. But that book talked about these assets and liabilities. So assets is something which puts money in your pocket, and liability is something which takes money out of your pocket. And then there was such a light bulb moment for her. And then she was like, oh, so we were told, a whole life, I've been lied about all this finances and like rich life. And then she was on board. And at that time, I was going through, so my job was very toxic at that time. And then I wanted to get out, but still due to my visa constraints, I was not getting out. And she understood, okay, now, and I see a reason why people leave their jobs, because they just don't want to go to work and do something that they don't enjoy. And I mean, she heard of stories where people go to work and then they just do it because there is, and they do it for 65 because they don't know there's an alternate path. And this book, after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I gave her Simple Path to Wealth. And then she read that book, and then she immediately, like, she was on board. She was like, I absolutely love it, especially the fact that you're going through this phase. I don't want me to go through that phase in that future and then, do that for the rest of my life. And then that's when she was on board. Like those two books, Rich Dad Poor Dad and Simple Path to Wealth, that just clicked for me. Because I don't know if it happens in your family sometimes, when I say it versus when some other person says it, I think, they would maybe like grasp that idea from, let's say, a book or a podcast versus like you telling it, they just like, ignore. So, my wife, read those two books, and then she was on board. And that's when we were just trying to, so she was like, so what should we do? Like, how can we become financially independent? And then that's when I was always like frugal, and then we were trying to optimize our big three expenses, which like housing, food, and transportation. That was a big, I told her, like, we need to build our assets and crush our liabilities, right? So our assets were our investments. So we wanted to maximize our investments. So how can we maximize is what, we were trying to apply this 80-20 principle, where, 80% of your expenses most likely come from 20% of your items, which was housing, food, and transportation. So she was on board. She didn't, at that time we were living in an apartment that was okay-ish, but not a great one. We were paying $800 per month. We lived in the same apartment for like 5 years. And then she read that book, we were looking to buy a different car. At that time I had Honda Civic, and it stopped working. So I had to buy a new car in that time. I bought a used Toyota Camry, and she wanted a new one. Like she thought, okay, since you're working for a full-time job and, you're in the US, shouldn't we be getting a luxury car? But our goal was to maximize our investments and minimize, our expenses. And so we got a used, Toyota Camry that I'm still driving today. And when it comes to the that category was food. And then we were hardly eating out. We were just, cooking most of our meals at house. And she was on board. And the greatest thing was that she was on board, because let's say if she wanted to change that apartment, right, or if she wanted a luxury car, or she wanted to eat out, this would not have been possible. Because I don't know where I heard it, but one of the biggest financial decisions is actually who you marry. That's one of the biggest decisions, because it's 50% of your I can't put a number on it, but yeah, it's just all the habits, all the behaviors, they just compound, and it's significantly easier. It's like, when you marry a person who's not financially on board, you're just, moving rock uphill. It's very difficult versus, if you have somebody on board, it's just moving rock downhill. So it becomes so much easier when you have spouse on board. But yeah, that's how I got my wife to be on board with me.
So everyone listening, you have to take your wife to the library and just, put The Simple Path to Wealth in front of her. No, I'm just joking. But I totally agree with you. The worst thing that you can do is try to tell your wife about financial independence. You said it's better if they hear it from somebody else. And that is, in my experience, that was the same thing. I tried to get my wife to, I told her about it. I was all excited and tried to get her to read Mr. Money Mustache articles, and that did not go well. And then I finally said, hey, there's this thing called Camp Fi, where it's a bunch of people on the financial independence journey, 3-day weekend. I'll pay for your ticket if you'll come with me. And I paid for her ticket. She came with me. We made a road trip out. It was super fun. And she met Paula Pant there of Afford Anything podcast, who's a big content creator in the personal finance space. And Paula Pant gave this talk, and my wife totally resonated with her. And then suddenly she was on board with our FI journey. Now, I am and always have been the main driver pushing for FI, but my wife supports the goal and the vision. And that's really all you need, I think, from your spouse, whether you're, you have a husband or a wife, is you just need your spouse to be on board with the goal of financial independence. You don't need them to be a maniac about it like you are or I am, right, Sathish? Like, we can be the crazy one who creates a podcast about financial independence and talks about it all the time and goes to conferences and it has all these nerdy ass FI friends. You don't have to get your spouse to do the same thing. They just need to support the idea of achieving financial independence together, and you can lead and they can support. Now, occasionally there are marriages where both husband and wife, or if same sex, wife and wife, or husband and husband, are both into it. And that's great, but that is so fucking rare. It's almost always driven by one person who discovers FI and becomes obsessed with it, and then they just need a partner to be on board with the vision, and that's all you need. So Take your spouse to a Camp Fi or to a local FI meetup and help them find people they can relate to, because trying to tell your spouse what to do and what not to do when it comes to money is a amazing recipe for a fight, a breakup, or a divorce.
Yep. Yeah, that for sure. And it was always like, it was never like a rainbow sunshine, right? We had some disagreements, when it comes to purchases, because at that time I was, once you see the math, right, how $1 would compound in 30 years. So I was holding on to every dollar that I could. And, now that I'm like looking back at what had happened, I would have maybe eased out on these small purchases, because I don't think that would have, like, maybe a $50 dinner, with friends would have maybe, would have given some good experience. And, right, maybe like since I was optimizing my housing, food, and transportation, maybe I would have eased out on the other like smaller expenses. But like, there's this saying like penny wise and pound foolish, right? So maybe I could have done that. But yeah, that led into a lot of disagreements back then, right? And then it was... but I'm glad, like, she just supports my journey. Even till this day, just like you said, I'm one of the biggest drivers to FI, and she's on board with it, because she understands like what 4% rule is and why we came up with our FIRE number, which is 2.4 million, and how we came up with that number. And even any purchases, we just any big purchases, we just discuss and see if it's like really needed, if it aligns with our values. But yeah, I'm still like, maybe I'm still not I've eased out on any, like, let's say under $100 decisions. I thought, okay, let's not discuss with the other partner, let's make that, because yeah, I feel like once we have that foundation, I don't think we have to be very ruthless even when it comes to the smallest expense also, because that can cause fights for sure. Just like that.
100%.
Yeah,
and I've shared this many times on the podcast, but I decided after I discovered financial independence, I decided I wasn't going to eat out at restaurants anymore. But I didn't make my wife not eat out at restaurants. I said, you can do whatever you want, because she earned her own money, and I told her I don't mind if you go eat out with your friends. I just am so excited about investing as much of my money that I make into the market. That's my highest excitement. So unless someone else is paying for the meal, I'm not going to eat out. And I did that for about 3 years. But those 3 years, she went out and ate with her friends and whatever. And when we would do stuff, we would just do picnics, make food at home, and go together. So it was still fun. And now, it was fun for 2 to 3 years to not eat out at restaurants. Now, at my net worth of over 3.5 million, we eat out 2 to 4 times a week. So it was frugality is a phase, but like Sathish and I were talking, in the beginning of your FI journey, it pays massive dividends to be very frugal and get as much money into the market as fast as possible, so you can build up that wealth snowball so it can start rolling down the hill on its own. And then later in life, you can upgrade your lifestyle. There was one thing I forgot to mention when you're talking about when you had the conversation with your friend who wanted $380 to help with the immigration application, and you were making $70,000 or $75,000 a year, and you were unknowingly living paycheck to paycheck. And this is the thing people don't get, and I didn't get either, because it happened to me just like it happened to Sathish, is lifestyle creep is real. So lifestyle inflation, it creeps like a slow vine that you don't notice it's growing until you're like, holy shit, there's this giant fucking creeping vine all over the place, aka all my money's gone, and I make more than I've ever made in my life, but I have nothing to show for it. And so this, again, is why it's so important once you discover financial independence to stop the lifestyle creep, the lifestyle inflation, and get as much invested as possible in that beginning so that money can compound for 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years. And then once you get to a decent sized snowball, you can slow down on being hyper frugal and start to buy back your time, upgrade your lifestyle, and really enjoy your life. And if you approach that initial kind of 0 to 100, 0 to 500K phase of frugality with a sense of fun and adventure, like, oh my God, it's so fun to figure out how to live for as inexpensive as possible, it will be a fun journey. If you think you have to sacrifice, that your life will feel like a sacrifice. So I never felt like a sacrifice when I didn't eat out for 3 years. It was this hilariously fun experiment that I just found so enjoyable. I would literally take leftovers from work meals home to eat them at home because I was having so much fun saving as much money as possible. So, sorry, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, I thought I was the only one doing that, so I have somebody who just confessed to me that, yeah, you have done the same thing. Yeah, go on.
So you said you'd rather be a millionaire with a six-pack in a Toyota than an unhealthy millionaire in a Ferrari. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, oh yeah, this hits me hard. I wrote that sentence probably in 2022, I believe. That's when I started writing on my blog, compoundingproject.com. But yeah, so prior to that, I thought what success meant to me was having the most amount of money, right? Having the luxury car, luxury house, and then expensive vacations. I thought that was success to me until I started my own personal development journey, the self-help journey. That's when I realized aligning spending with values is most important. So for me currently, success to me, let's say if you have, let's say, $10 million, but if you are unhealthy, like you're the worst shape ever, in my personal opinion, that's not success to me. That's not considered success to me. Like, it's like that definition varies based on the person, but for me, I don't consider that as success, because health is the foundation of everything that we do, right? And I heard a quote somewhere, a healthy person has 1,000 wishes, but a sick person has only one wish. So it just speaks to the fact that we just totally underestimate our own body, which we can, let's say, if we lose money, we can get that money back, but if we lose our health, it's very hard to get that back. So I learned the importance of health when in around the same time frame, and I thought, okay, let's say even if I have, let's say once I reach my financial independence number and I buy a Ferrari, but if I'm the worst shape of my life, that is not success to me. And I thought, okay, I'll try to optimize my life not only when it comes to wealth, but other areas of life as well, which the core pillars of compounding project are health, wealth, and wisdom. And so that's when I thought, okay, I would rather be a person with a six-pack ab, which maybe I was too aggressive at that time. Maybe if you are in a good healthy condition, it's still a success to me. And I would rather be in that healthy condition and drive my Toyota. I'll be more happy at that success to me versus driving a Ferrari and then being in the worst shape of your life.
So let's talk a little bit more about your health and fitness journey. So in preparation for this podcast, I was listening to an interview you did on Cody Berman's show, the Financial Independence Show, and you mentioned that you lost 40 pounds in a year, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. That's great. And you're not a huge person. I've met you in person. My guess is you're 5'7" to 5'9".
Yep.
And 5'8". Oh, right. Nailed it. But you're not 6'5" and whatever. So 40 pounds on a 5'8" frame is a lot of weight. So tell us about that journey to losing those 40 pounds. And then I know you did ultimately get the six-pack, I believe. So tell us about the journey of losing 40 pounds and then getting the six-pack and anything else related to that health and fitness journey that you want to share with us.
Yeah, sure. So when I first heard about the importance of compounding, I first heard its importance when it comes to wealth. Most people, when they hear about compounding, they understand how wealth compounds, right? But there is this book called Compound Effect by Darren Hardy, which actually talks about how compounding not only affects your wealth, but it affects almost every part of your life. There's this quote by Naval, who I'm a big fan of. He said, I'm paraphrasing this, but he said, most of the results in life come from compound interest, be it health, be it knowledge, be it relationships, be it wealth. It comes from compound interest. So at that time, I was not very diligent when it comes to my health, and I was unnoticingly putting on weight, which I didn't realize until one day. Also, I saw myself in the mirror and I was like, holy cow, I'm like, I gained 40 pounds. I don't know how it happened, because, this compounding, you wouldn't know, right? You just don't wake up with like 40 pounds of overweight in one night. And the same thing, like, you just don't wake up with a six pack abs, on one night, right? It's just like the slow progress or slow decline that you will not notice. So when I noticed that, and at that time I was a lot into like health and fitness, and then I realized, so at that time my thinking was, in order to lose weight, all you have to do is go to the gym, just to go on a treadmill, and then just walk or run for 1 hour and go back home and eat salads. I thought that was a recipe to lose weight, and I did that. And after 2 weeks I quit that. Not only quit that, but actually gained even more weight, because I was craving so much that I just couldn't. It was not sustainable anymore. And that's when I was like doing a lot of research, and I thought the best way to lose weight is to be on calorie deficit. And that was it. That was that light bulb moment, when it just made sense to me. Because if you survive on 2000, if maintenance is 2000 calories, and if you eat 2500 calories, the mass balance, it's real, right? You can't just out of thin air lose that 500 calories. It has to come from if you want to lose weight, it has to come from a deficit. And that's where I started tracking my food, and boy, that changed everything. That I the best investment that I've made so far in my life, it's a $10 food scale that I got from Amazon Basics. And I don't know if you have that moment where once you realize how much one serving of peanut butter is, and that's when I realized my whole life I was bulking. Like my whole 28 years, I was doing, I was in a bulk. I didn't realize that. So that was my light bulb moment, when I started weighing my food, tracking what I was eating. I was in the beginning, I was not that diligent. I was just focusing on like eating real foods and not feeling hungry. Actually, like I feel this fitness is a lot of people overcomplicated, but if you just like compounding, right, just simple path to wealth, there's also there could be like a simple path to fitness also. It's just it's the small repeated actions done consistently over time will yield big results. What the only catch here is, like, you have to trust the process and be patient, and which is which we can talk about it later, how we can do, like, try to optimize that. But yeah, it was the biggest thing was measuring my food, like tracking my food, and also lifting weights. I hardly do any cardio, but after speaking to you, I started my VO2 max training, which we can save it for a different episode. But yeah, that was my two biggest levers, lifting weights and tracking food.
Yeah, I think everyone who is carrying more body fat than they would like to track your food for 3 months and do as Sathish did, get a $10 food scale and weigh everything and enter it into an app like MyFitnessPal or Macro Factor or one of the other ones, Cal AI, doesn't matter which one it is, and just do it for 3 months, and you will learn so much about food and calories. And why you're doing that, if you want to make it even more valuable, is get a body scale that tracks your body weight and your body fat. So I use the Withings scale. I've been using it for, I think, 13 years now. At least 12. I got it in 2014. So it tracks my body fat percentage and my body weight. And I'll put a link in the show notes. But if you start tracking your food and your body fat percentage and your weight, it's only a matter of time before you figure out how to get into a calorie deficit and then start losing weight. And you'll know if you're in a calorie deficit is the scale is going down. Your weight is trending down. Your body fat is trending down. And it's so powerful. But I'm curious, Sathish, how long... So I tracked my nutrition religiously for 10 fucking years, which is insane, I know, but I'm kind of a crazy person sometimes. I have not tracked my nutrition for the last 2 years, and I've just been intuitively eating, but I did spend 10 years tracking. How long did you track your food, and are you still tracking it?
So yeah, and when it comes to tracking food, in the beginning, so I started in maybe around like 2022, 2023, in that time frame, and I tracked for 2 years. And I admit I was not religiously doing it for 2 years. In that 2 year span, I did religiously for 6 months, because when I was tracking, you know I was tracking the raw weight, like the when it comes to like rice, right? The raw food versus cooked food, because at that time, if you like really want to like track to the extreme, so I did that for 6 months, and then it was that's when I got my first visible six pack. But since then, I've been once understood the power of tracking, but it was getting like at one point like too much, because I had to cook my own food, and my wife has to cook her own food, and then we have to cook food for my kid, and it was getting too much, and we were having a stressful life. And now what I have been doing is I still track, but I just track the cooked food. So let's say maybe 150 grams of rice, and then 100 grams of chicken, and maybe 250 grams of vegetables. And then I try to maintain that, and depending on how my weight is going, I'll just try to decrease or increase the amount of carbs, and that's one thing that I vary. But I'm not doing it religiously lately. It's just that we are expecting a baby, which I told you, right? And it's just becoming too much. So we're just cooking in bulk, and then like weighing the cooked food. So it's still keeping me on track. But only thing I didn't figure out was I was able to automate my investments. The same investments that I automated 2017, I was able to do that. But when it comes to health, like I can't automate it. Like it's like I heard somewhere. I think Sahil Bloom says, when it comes to health, you can't own it. It's not like a house that you can own, but it's like rent. It's like it's rented, and then the rent is due every day. Like let's say if I have six pack now, and then I can't just eat whatever I want and not work out for the next 20-30 years. It's not possible. So that I love that. It's very hard actually to be consistent when it comes to health versus wealth. I mean, there are so many parallels between health and wealth, but I believe in this aspect there's so much different. I can automate my investments, but I can't automate going to the gym.
Yes. So let's talk about some of the financial principles that transfer best to fitness, and vice versa, the fitness principles that transfer best to money. Because I know, just like me, Fit Rich Life, Health, Wealth, Wisdom, Compounding Project, we're just very into the same stuff. So I'm curious, in your mind, what are some of the principles that transfer between money and health?
Yeah, it's just we spoke about automation, and spoke about dollar cost averaging, where you're investing certain amount every month, right? In the same way, how the compounding works, when you invest consistently and repeat it over a long period of time, would give massive results. The same principle would apply when it comes to fitness as well, like going to the gym, tracking your food and tracking your sleep, and also tracking the key metrics. There are only two major metrics that I track, like muscle mass and VO2 max. These are the two major ones that I keep tracking. And previously I used to always have the mindset of all or nothing. So I thought, okay, like if I had 1 hour to work out, I would just work out for 1 hour. And then if I didn't have 1 hour, I would just skip that day. Versus, after I read Atomic Habits, every small action that you do every day, that matters more. Like, it's just that don't put a zero on a particular day, because again, Charlie Munger said, never interrupt compounding unnecessarily. So recording a zero would interrupt that compounding process. So yeah, this, that consistency is one of the parallels, that I took from wealth and started applying to my health as well. Because most people think, especially when it comes to fitness, most people think like, okay, you can get six pack in 6 weeks and you can lose 10 pounds in a month, and just like in wealth, people say, you can become a millionaire in 1 year and you can double your money in a month. So there are all this like fancy stuff that most people would get attracted to, but actually what works is, all these small actions done consistently, will produce massive results over long periods of time. So those are the parallels between health and fitness. Like health and wealth.
Yeah, I love it. So I was thinking about it, the automation and the dollar cost averaging, and kind of what came to me is, if on average, say 80% of the time you sleep 8 hours a night, and 80% of the time you get 10,000 to 20,000 steps a day, and 80% of the time you eat whole foods, and 80% of the time of the year you work out 3 to 5 times a week, some sort of strength training and or cardio, you're going to be in great shape. And that's if you can automate that as just part of your identity, like who you are, what you do. What I do is I sleep 8 hours a night most nights. I walk 10,000 to 20,000 steps most days. I eat mostly whole foods. I work out every week, 3 to 5 times a week, most weeks. And you'll be incredibly fit over a lifetime. This will compound into greater and greater health. And it's when we start sacrificing our sleep or start, eating a bunch more processed food, we stop working out, and then the compounding goes in reverse. It cuts the other way. We start getting fatter every month and less healthy every month. But if you have those right things automated, the ones I just mentioned, because they are a core part of your identity, then you just keep getting fitter and fitter year after year, and you compared to the average person the contrast is gonna get bigger and bigger. Share the story about the person in the compounding effect, about the two people. You know what I'm talking about? Share that story real quick, because it'll illustrate exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So yeah, I still remember that example till today. I read that probably 7 or 8 years ago. So yeah, Darren Hardy, his book Compound Effect talks about this one beautiful example, which, let's say, I talks about two people, person A and person B. So person A, he tries to take care of his health, and then he starts doing some minor changes where he cuts his 125 calories per day, maybe by switching from mayo to mustard on a sandwich, or by going from a regular Coke to a Diet Coke, right? Or maybe adding 10 grams less of oil. Like no Herculean efforts. It's just like small one minor change where he's cutting his daily calories by 125 calories. Versus person B, who just starts enjoying his life, and he eats 125 calories more, right? Just like maybe one extra soda per day, or one extra maybe processed food like chips, or maybe one extra spoon of oil, right? No massive change, but just like 125 extra calories per day. And then after 5 months, and then if you were to see both people, they look almost the same. If somebody tells that they're making some changes, you would hardly believe it, because they look almost exactly the same. And and then after like 10 months, they even still look the same. Like nobody would believe that they're doing something consistently. Like one person is eating 125 calories less and one person is eating 125 calories more. Like nobody would believe that. After 15 months, still no difference. After 18 months, they slowly start seeing some noticeable changes. After 25 months, the results are visible, and after 31 months, person A has lost 33.5 pounds and person B has gained 33.5 pounds. And both persons after 31 months are 67 pounds apart, which is insane, just by 125 calorie difference. And that one habit has just compounded, because in the initial phase it's very hard to ignore that small choices, but over that 31-month period it's just compounded. Because that's why when you see your friend after maybe 1 or 2 years, you'll immediately notice the difference. Maybe they've lost weight or they've gained weight. And you also spoke about this, like compounding working in a different direction, and that is even true. Because when I talk about compounding to my friends, and some people say, hey, this concept is too complex for me, maybe I'll start something later, right? But believe it or not, like compounding is working in everybody's life right now, right? It's either working for you or working against you. You can't just pause it. So and that speaks to the fact that, yeah, of course, like it's very difficult to be consistent for that amount of time, be religiously tracking your calories and eat under eating by like 125 calories. But at least, like, once you understand that concept, then you realize how the small changes in your daily life can compound your life. And you don't have to, like, because I always thought like, when to achieve like massive results, I thought you have to put massive action. But Atomic Habits by James Clear, it talks about this concept of just small actions done consistently will lead to massive results. And that was such a light bulb moment for me. I started applying that to all my areas of life. And yeah, it's hard to actually be consistent, because you're not seeing immediate results, because we're so used to looking at doing something and then getting that initial results, like instant gratification. But yeah, it's the opposite. Like, be consistent, let that small actions compound.
Yeah, this is why I think identity is so important. And we're back. Satish's camera died, and we used it as an excuse to fill up our water and use the restroom. But we're back. And what I was saying is, this is why I think identity is so important when it comes to both your fitness and your money. Because when you see yourself as someone who is fit and you live a lifestyle that is a fitness lifestyle, then all these things like sleeping 8 hours a night, getting 10,000 plus steps, eating mostly whole foods, working out 3 to 5 times a week is just a part of who you are. It's not something you have to do. It's something that you get to do because it is a part of your identity. And it's the same thing with the money stuff, because if you say, I am someone who's on the path to financial independence, then by default, you're investing every month. And even better, you have your investments automated so you don't have to think about it. And this is one of the things I really try to share with people who are trying to get in shape or trying to turn their money situation around, is you have to choose a new identity proactively, saying, hey, I'm on the path to financial independence now. And by claiming that as who you are now, you set in motion these set of habits and actions that are a part of that identity that then one day will make you financially independent. And it's the same thing with your fitness. If you say, I am a person who lives a fit lifestyle, then by default, you sleep at 8 hours a night, you work out every week, you eat mostly whole foods, and your life is built around fitness activities. And this is, I think, a lot of people who struggle, especially with fitness, is they just don't see themselves as a fitness person. But there are millions of versions of fitness. There's the cyclist. There is the rollerblader, the pickleball player, the weightlifter, the CrossFit person, the high rocks person, the hula hooper, the dancer. There's a billion different versions, and you just have to find the one or combination of ones that light you up, that make you excited. And when you attach your identity to those physical pursuits, then the default is you live a fit lifestyle, and the byproduct is you are fit.
100% agree. I believe James Clear talks about this concept in his book Atomic Habits, where identity-based habits versus a goal-focused thinking. I believe he has these 3 circles where most people would first focus on the goal, and then they realize, okay, it's not working, because James Clear gives us an example of, let's say, if two persons want to lose 40 pounds, and then one person lost 40 pounds and the other person did not lose 40 pounds, then it's not the goal that made the difference, right? Because both of them had the same goal of losing 40 pounds. Then there is something else which he talks about, like systems and then identity. So yeah. He says let's say if you want to run, instead of thinking about, I want to run a half marathon in the next 6 months, focus that thinking to becoming a runner. Like, that's an identity based habit. Like, when you identify yourself as a runner, and what does runner do? Runner runs. And then and then you can come up with the goal then, right? First identify, come up with the identity, and then develop systems around it, and then which will eventually lead to goal, versus like people just focusing on goal and not focusing on the systems and identity. Yeah, we can talk about this concept for hours, but I think it's good that you brought that up, that identity based habits, because most people will also have unconsciously have this strong identity tied to them. Because some people might say, when it comes to wealth, they might say, hey, I'm not a saver. Like, are you really not a saver, or you're just tagging yourself as somebody who doesn't save? But can you question that limiting belief, right? When somebody says, hey, I'm not a runner, I'm not good at math, I'm not good at names. Like, it's just that we unconsciously tie our identity to these I would say like habits. But it's just that self-awareness, and then tying your like coming up with that identity based habits, it's probably like best shift of thinking, or mindset.
100%. And words have so much power, and the words we tell ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves have so much power. I have this great example related to this. So a couple of years ago, I was working with a fitness coach, and I was talking with him, and I said, I tend to overeat. That's why I always track my food. And he said, stop, Justin. That's a limiting belief, that you tend to overeat. And so ever since he pointed that out, my new belief, and I had to instill this, is I eat in accordance with my optimal fitness and physique. And when I first started this, it felt a little like a stretch. So I used a bridge, which is I'm beginning to always eat in accordance with my optimal fitness and physique. And then eventually, I back that up with habits where I do eat in accordance with my optimal fitness and physique. And then over a course of a few months of repeating the new belief and backing it up with the new actions, it then became my reality. And so I love that you pointed out some of the common ones. I'm not a saver. I'm bad with my money. I'm not a runner. I'm not a weightlifter. You get to be whoever you want to be. You just have to choose. And then you start to do the actions of whatever that identity is. And then you start changing the language or the affirmation around who you are and what you do. And the affirmation about who you are and what you do has to be paired with the action. And then eventually the mind and body create the physical expression of whatever this thing is you want, whether that's being a runner, being great with saving money and investing, or, getting 8 hours of sleep, reading books every day, being a runner, a pickleballer, whatever you want. You get to choose.
Yeah. There's a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which talks about, in detail about this concept. Like, because even I thought the same, I thought a person, whether he has a talent, it's just by nature. It's just like in genetics, and then there's not really much you can do. But that book taught me that growth mindset where if you really want, it's like nurture, you can become a runner, you can be good at math, you can become a great saver. It's just how consistently you do it and how bad you want it. But it's just a limiting belief that we impose on ourselves. Yeah, but I highly recommend reading that book for somebody who wants to explore this idea more.
Yeah. So before we start to wind it down, there is one thing I want to talk about, because both of us have suffered from this at some point and probably still do. And the question is, at what point does optimization stop serving your fit rich life and start shrinking it?
Yeah, this is a daily struggle for me. So for me, one of my, I would say, I don't consider it as a bad habit, but what happens is, I try to optimize this 24 hours that I have. Let's say if I just watch TV for 1 hour and then I feel like that hour is wasted. I just need to get out of the habit. It's just, I feel so much guilt, and then I'll think maybe I could have recorded a podcast in that 1 hour, or maybe I could have played pickleball in that 1 hour, or maybe I could have gone to the gym in that 1 hour. I just start coming up with all these thoughts in my mind, and then I just feel that not in that 1 hour, but that one day is wasted. I believe it's a good problem to have, but still, when I try to over optimize, I feel like it's backfiring me, because it's okay, you can't just optimize 24 hours. It's not sustainable at all. But I don't know, maybe I could take your advice on how to stop these thoughts from trickling in, because that's how I feel when I feel like an hour is wasted. But when I'm trying to over optimize, and sometimes it just backfire, and then I sometimes I ruin my rest of the evening just because I wasted that 1 hour, and it just adds so much stress to my life, and not only me, to my wife and unfortunately my kid as well. He thinks that he made some mistake, but it's just me trying to just over optimize, and that's just backfiring. What are your thoughts? I'm just curious to know your thoughts.
Remind me your age.
35.
Yeah. So I think a part of this comes with age, maybe. And I think there is a lot of truth that wisdom comes with age, because we almost have to go through these ridiculous things like over optimizing, like beating yourself up for watching an hour of TV, so that later you can realize how ridiculous you were being. So that's part one of my answer, is you almost have to go through this. Second piece is, as you get older, you also, if you're, in my opinion, doing a good job of growing, is you develop more self-compassion. So you stop beating yourself up over trivial things like watching an hour of TV. And then the third part to my answer is, as you get older, you start to realize that there is this balance of doing constructive things like recording a podcast and consuming things that are enjoyable and just doing them for the pure enjoyment. They don't do anything necessarily. They don't grow your business or grow your podcast, but they feed parts of yourself that need to be nourished. So I love watching TV. I love a great fucking 10, 12 episode TV show. Love them. And I will watch 1 to 3 hours per night. And happily. Or I'll take a full fucking day. Maybe I recorded a couple podcasts, played 20 hours of pickleball, and I'm just beat to shit, physically, mentally, and I'll just spend a whole afternoon and evening watching shows and movies with my wife. And it's bliss. It's just like, hey, I deserve this. I worked my ass off on the courts. I recorded 2 podcasts. I wrote a fucking email newsletter. I posted every day on Threads. I'm going to give myself 5 hours to just veg out on art that I think is beautiful and enjoyable. And if it makes you feel better, J.L. Collins loves a good show too. We every time we talk on our one-on-one meetings, we talk about the TV shows we're really enjoying. And we also both read books for fun. I read science fiction and fantasy every night before I go to sleep. So I'm very optimized in many areas of my life, but I've also loosened the grip on everything having to always be productive and realizing that there are various different forms of recharging, and they come in the form of leisure. So that could be leisurely enjoying a good TV show. And you're learning in that too, because I've watched so many shows where the acting, the storytelling, the lessons, the parables that they're beautifully illustrating through cinema, and they're amazing, and they make me think about life, family, love, struggle, wins, losses, and it's so enjoyable. And so, I really want to invite you, Sathish, to embrace leisure in a healthy manner. So if 80% of your time you're productive, cool. 20% of the time you can be at leisure and let your mind, body, spirit, and heart rejuvenate, and then you can give even more during that 80% because you're not beating yourself down constantly for taking a break from producing.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. Now that you're saying it, I think it takes one person, other person, just to give that suggestion, because I'm very bad at my that self-awareness piece, like introspection, right? Yep. I think maybe it comes with age, but now that you pointed it out, it's okay to loosen up because you'll be more productive in that remaining 80%. That makes total sense. Yeah, it's something that it's an active thing that I should work on. But at least it gives me, now that I spoke to you, gives me some confidence that it's possible.
Yeah, and whether the show is a comedy, like what's the one about the soccer team? It's escaping my mind right now. It's huge. Everyone's shouting at me right now. Ted Lasso. Have you watched Ted Lasso?
I've heard about it, but I'm very bad.
I'm going to reach through the screen and slap you. It is such a funny, heartwarming show that your spirit will be nourished just by watching the show. And it is done so well. You will laugh so often. You will ask yourself, why isn't more TV like this? Because it's so fucking good. Then the same producer did the show called Shrinking, which is, I've never laughed so hard. My wife literally after one of the show's episodes, she said, I've never heard you laugh so many times during a TV show. And laughter is medicine. And then there's also all these amazing science fiction and fantasy shows, if you like that kind of stuff like I do, which I absolutely love, that just let me dream and be a child. And, oh, yes, there's magic and there's, time traveling and all these different things, and it just lets my imagination like get crazy and big like it was when I was a kid. And there is something about getting plenty of laughter in, getting things that allow you to tap into that inner child imagination that many of us adults have lost, that is going to serve you in ways that you just can't foresee, that will add to your creative work, your career work, your relationship, etc. So hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I even made some notes as well. I'm going to watch, because if it's coming from you, I'll take it seriously. Yeah, I'll
Sathish has never watched TV, and now he's like, wait a minute, Justin's a millionaire, and he has a six-pack, and he watches TV. Okay, I can watch TV now.
No, don't get me wrong. I still watch TV, like movies and documentaries, but never into this TV series. I mean, I think the last one I watched was maybe Breaking Bad. Before I started my FI journey.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And one of the things to ask yourself when you're consuming stuff like TV is, do you feel like at the end of it, it added to your life? So when I watched Ted Lasso, it's just so heartwarming and so funny and fun. It felt like a good use of my time because it literally warmed my spirit. It made me laugh. And then there's other things. I couldn't watch Breaking Bad because one of my family members was heavily into drugs. So when I watched it, it would stress me out. So I can't. I've tried to watch that show a couple different times and I just can't watch it. And then there's some guilty pleasure shows that I know they're a little intense, but I just really like. So I'll give you an example. Billions. Have you ever watched the show Billions?
Nope.
Bro,
I'm very bad at this.
You're terrible. You need to watch Billions, Ted Lasso, and Shrinking. And then when you finish all those, come back to me and I'll give you some other good shows to watch.
Yep. So if you want me to start, what out of these three, what would you recommend me start with?
Watch Ted Lasso because it'll be a show you and your wife can enjoy together.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
It's family friendly. It's so good. Billions is going to be more just like you enjoying it, most likely. And Shrinking is also a show you could watch with your wife. Your wife may like Billions. It was too intense and too much. One of the things I really like is power dynamics, where very strong, powerful people are struggling against each other, and there's a lot of that in Billions, and that stresses my wife out, where for me it's energizing. And it's kind of, that's what I meant by a guilty pleasure, is I don't want to go out there and get in some power struggle with somebody, but I find it fascinating, the tension and the the outmaneuvering and the strategy and the backstabbing. It's just fun for me to watch. So anyways, enough about TV.
Yes.
Stop over-optimizing your life compounding project, man. And unoptimize some of it so that you can give even more in other areas of your life.
Yep. Yeah. That's definitely a skill. It's also a skill, right? To unmaster.
Yeah. Great. So we've gone on for well over 2 hours. So I'll definitely have to have you back on the show because there's two things I want to talk about. But maybe we make it its own episode because both of us are podcasters. We're both very passionate about podcasting. So I did want to talk to you about building Compounding Project. You know, some of the impactful guests you've had on the show. But I think we should just save that for another show because one of the things I love to do is bring a guest that's been on before and do what I call Fit Rich Life upgrades, where we think through all the different things that we've done to upgrade our life over the last 6 months. And it could be supplements, books, movies, TV shows, apps, etc. And we can just do another hour or two on all that stuff. Plus, we can talk about podcasting and that whole journey, content creation, because you and I are, you know, we met at FinCon, which is it's a conference for creators in the personal finance, wealth, and money space. So let's do a follow-up there and wind the show down. And you know what I'm going to ask you. And I want you to share your tips, tools, and strategies for fitness and health, money and wealth, and life and happiness.
Yeah. I know I'm going to be getting that question because I listen to your podcast and I sometimes go to just that part, revisit that part and see like what people have and told about those tips, tools, and strategies, right? So yeah, when it comes to health and fitness, my biggest difference or change had been with adding protein to almost every meal. Like not almost, like every meal, adding protein. It's just, coming back from from an Indian background, like we are I believe every culture has got its own, like maybe good side and bad side. But this, for me, like growing up, I realized we are just more like carb heavy. Like we would add maybe rice with some, like lentils and vegetables. That's, if you look at that meal, it's mostly a carb meal, right? And then when I started learning about nutrition, and what I realized was, it's very hard to get clean protein. Like you can't accidentally meet your protein goal. It doesn't happen. So I was, because you can overeat carbs and you can overeat fats, but it's hard to overeat clean protein. And one thing I made sure after I started my fitness journey was having at least 20 grams, 20 to 30 grams of protein, like clean protein, in every meal. And what it actually did wonders, especially when it comes to my calorie deficit. Like protein, it's very satiating, and it also has got, maybe we can geek about it, but yeah, it is also got I believe it's called the thermic effect of food, where the amount of calories it takes to burn that particular macronutrient, it's high for protein. So that's one of the biggest upgrades that or strategies, or a tool, whatever you call it, I've done for my fitness, and that has significantly impacted my fitness journey.
I love it. So good. And it's every coaching client I work with, I have to teach them how to include protein with every meal. I'll teach you one other really easy trick that has really changed my life and a lot of other people, and you might do it already, is just before you even have breakfast, have 1 or 2 scoops of protein, which is 20 to 50 grams of protein right there. And it makes it so easy to hit your protein target for the day if you start the day with 50 grams of protein. And you can make yourself a nice breakfast, whatever you enjoy, and have just water mixed with protein powder before you even eat that breakfast. You'll eat less of the breakfast, and you'll already have, call it 20 to 50 grams of protein working towards your total daily target. So it makes getting in more protein at each successive meal less challenging. So if you only get 15 grams at the next meal, you've already got 50 that you started with in the day. And it has this trickle down effect where if you start the day with a lot of protein like that, you will just naturally eat less throughout the rest of the day. So that's another trick. But I love what you're saying. Every single meal should have a main protein source, and the meal should be built around that. So your number one focus is the protein, and then get plenty of vegetables, and then look at the carb and the fatty, say, dressing or sauce.
Yeah. Most people like totally overestimate because they overestimate their diet. They think like, they have a eating problem, but actually like even I feel like I have eating problem if I don't have protein. Like, if you give me some rice and lentils and I can eat that, like even, a processed food. I'm human, right? I have cravings also, but that's why when I add protein, it's almost like impossible to overeat protein. Have you ever seen somebody binging like grilled chicken breast, like or like boiled eggs? It's very hard, right? Your stomach, your body would just reject after maybe a couple chicken breasts. But yeah, it's done wonders, and I love that tip that start your day with maybe 1 to 2 scoops of protein. That's a good one. Yeah, I love that.
Money and wealth.
Yeah. I would have said automation, but we spoke about automation for almost for the whole podcast. So I thought I'll just give one more strategy apart from automation. It's just that one tip is to not quit in the beginning of your compounding journey, because most people like the first 100K took me like 3 years to hit my first 100K. But if I was just chasing returns and maybe looking at my friends and see how like maybe I would have felt FOMO, I would have given up. And then I believe it's the patience is the price that we have to pay to build wealth. And that's like there is no free lunch. Like here we are just the the amount of time that which you said, like time in the market is more important than timing the market. So yeah, that one tip is to not give up if you feel like the compounding is not working or the compounding has not started in your life yet, because it will eventually happen. Like you just give it enough time, and if you're consistently investing, you'll just that numbers will explode.
So good. 100%. You gotta give it the time. You gotta start and not stop. And it can take years before you really feel anything. But you just listened to a story of a man who went from 0 to 100K in 3 years, but he got very focused. And then it kind of grew pretty slow for the first 6-7 years, and then it exploded. So that's the patience. He paid the price of patience, and then his net worth exploded in the last 2 to 3 years. And I guarantee you, in another 2 to 3 years, it's going to be an even bigger explosion. So that's the price you have to pay. I really love that, because I think getting started is the hardest part, but the second hardest part is not giving up.
Yes.
Before the compounding effect starts to work in your favor.
Yeah. It's very hard, but yeah, I love that. So, and then you said
life and happiness. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I thought about it. I also already talked about this all or nothing, that thinking, right? All or nothing to all or something thinking. But maybe since I already talked about it during the episode, something that we didn't touch upon is lifelong learning. So that piece is very crucial for like life and happiness, because even my wife loves like learning, right? And then I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, and both are lifelong learners. So yeah, that compounding, when we talked about compounding in health and compounding in wealth, but also applies in wisdom as well. Your knowledge compounds. And Warren Buffett has this quote where he said, read 500 pages a day, knowledge builds up like compound interest. Of course, reading 500 pages a day, it's almost an impossible task. But yeah, at least if you get that idea, right, maybe you can start with like 1 page a day. 1 page a day is 300 pages per year. And you could be finishing maybe anywhere from like 1 to 2 books, depending on the length of the book. But still, that lifelong learning, I've always had that habit since I started my first, since I first read my book in 2017. And since then, now I'm actually like starting more books, but that I'm not finishing, which sometimes I regret. But I always have that thing in my mind, like, maybe it's listening to a podcast or reading a book or, maybe talking to friends like you, and then learning something and then implementing in real life, and that gives me joy. So that's one tip on life or happiness, is to never stop learning.
So good. And if you look at all the most successful people in the world, they have the habit of lifelong learning. And I do want to, in case people missed it, the all or nothing versus all or something, because it works in money and fitness. So if you mentioned, if I don't have time for a 1 to 2 hour workout, I won't even work out. And then later you learned, hey, maybe I don't have a time for a 1 to 2 hour workout, but I could do a quick 15 minutes. And then that compounds over a year. Into those 15 minutes compound into thousands of minutes and hours of exercise that you wouldn't have gotten. And the same thing with your money. Maybe you can't invest the full 1,000 this month, but you can put 200 away. Maybe you can't put 200 away this month, but you can put 50 away. And all of that adds up over a lifetime into extraordinary results. So the all or something is amazing. I'm really glad you brought that one back up, because you kind of glazed over it. And I was just like, wait a minute, that's really good. So both of those are good, lifelong learner and all or something instead of all or nothing. Sathish, host of the Compounding Project, great friend of mine. So glad you came on the show. Any last words before we shut this down?
Yeah, I want people, after listening to this, just take one small action. It could be in any area of your life. It doesn't have to be in wealth, but in any one area of your life that you're just trying to just get a hold of, just take one small action and be consistent. It could be anything. And, that will just trust the process, trust that compounding would work. And it's just a proven concept. It's not something that, that just that we found out just last 1 year. It's been working for since the beginning of life, or even before that. Like, compounding is just it's just amazing. It's been working for a long time now, and it's going to work in the future. And just I would highly encourage people to just start one small action and then be consistent with it.
Amazing. Compounding Project on Instagram is the best place to send people if they want to connect with you online.
Yes. On Instagram, Compounding Project. And we also have a YouTube podcast channel on YouTube, the same name, Compounding Project as well. But yeah, I check my DMs every day. So if people want to reach out to me, Compounding Project on Instagram is the best way.
Great. And his show, Compounding Project Podcast, is on Spotify, Apple, everywhere you enjoy your podcast entertainment. It's an awesome show. I've been on it twice. It's so awesome. I had to go back again. So thank you, brother, for being a great friend. Thank you for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom when it comes to health, wealth, and wisdom. And we'll have you back on the show. We'll do an upgrades episode where we cover our recent upgrades, as well as dive deep into content creation, podcasting, and more. So good to see you, brother.
Thanks for having me. I can't believe I spent more than 2 hours, but yeah, I love having these conversations.